Hi, my name's Serene. For years, I was told to stay quiet, to be the mature one, the grounded one. They praised me for disappearing. Marcella, my stepmother, said I made the house messy just by existing. My father said, don't make things harder than they are. Then, after everything, after my birthday passed like a ghost, after she burned the last letter my mom ever wrote me, they tried to send me away, like I was the problem. But what happens when the girl they tried to erase starts recording everything? And what if the only person who could end Marcella's performance was her own daughter? Would you believe me if I said the truth was louder than her silence? The delicate clatter of silverware echoed softly through the hallways of the house. Not loud, never loud, but just enough to serve as a quiet reminder. I wasn't welcome, not tonight, maybe not ever. I stood still at the entrance to the dining room, the dim hallway light behind me casting a faint shadow across the floor. The rest of me remained swallowed in darkness, like I belonged there. Half a ghost, half invisible. I watched them without breathing. 3 chairs had been pulled out neatly. 3 plates sat in front of them, steaming gently. A glass of water beside each, tiny droplets sliding down the outside like they'd just been poured. 3. Not 4. Marcella moved with deliberate grace, fussing over the already perfect table like she was hosting some upscale fundraiser instead of dinner with family. She aligned the silverware, straightened a napkin that didn't need straightening. She never looked up when she spoke. You already grabbed a snack earlier, didn't you? I blinked. The last thing I ate was a granola bar around noon, and now it was pushing 7. But I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure if it was a question or just another way of saying I wasn't expected. My presence was incidental. Dad sat at the end of the table, glasses slipping down his nose, eyes glued to his phone, probably reading the news again. He didn't glance at the plates or the number of chairs. If he noticed, he chose not to say anything. That had become his quiet talent over the years, ignoring anything too messy to address. Discomfort was just another tab he could close. Viora, already seated, began scooping mashed potatoes onto her plate, her perfectly curled blonde hair bouncing with each movement. Her nails gleamed, freshly painted in a soft pastel shade. She wore a new ivory sweater I hadn't seen before, probably one of Marcella's just because gifts. She looked like a magazine ad. Marcella finally looked at me, locking eyes across the room. Her smile was small, serene, almost gentle, but her words were something else. Some seats, she said, her voice smooth as polished marble, are earned. Then she sat, slow and poised, as if her sentence hadn't just cracked something open in the room. I turned and walked away before the sound of dinner really began, before forks hit plates, before the fake small talk started. I wasn't hungry anymore, or maybe I just couldn't pretend to be. Upstairs, I laid on my bed. The tablet was face down beside me, my phone powered off. The silence in my room felt thick, like fog, like molasses. It stretched and pulled at the minutes, making time feel endless. I listened. Laughter filtered up from below. The scrape of forks, the muted clinks of glasses, the rise and fall of voices pretending everything was okay. Marcella's exaggerated laugh rang out now and then. Her, I'm so delightful laugh. Her, look how gracious I am laugh. Later that night, when the sounds had died down and the dishwasher hummed softly, I crept down for water. The kitchen was clean. Too clean. The table had been cleared. No extra plate added. No note left saying, saved you some. No covered dish with foil and my name scribbled on top. Just nothing. Only the empty chair. 3 days later, it was Viora's birthday. I woke up to the smell of cinnamon rolls, frosting, and brewing coffee. That festive kind of morning scent. I looked out the window to see cars I didn't recognize parked outside. Pink and gold balloons were tied to the porch rail, swaying gently in the breeze. Marcella stood in the driveway, guiding a woman carrying a 3-tier white cake toward the front door like she was handling something sacred. No one had said a word about a party. Not Marcella, not Dad, not even Viora. I stayed upstairs the entire day. The doorbell rang so many times I lost count. At least 8, maybe more. Music began around 2 p.m., soft at first, then louder. I peeked once, silently, through the railing at the top of the stairs. Marcella was standing by the entryway, arms around a woman in yoga pants and designer heels. "So glad you could make it," she said with a wide smile. "Viora is just everything." "She really is your pride and joy," the woman responded. Marcella beamed. "Of course. She's my legacy." I ducked back before anyone saw me. 3 days earlier, on my birthday, there had been no frosting, no balloons, no greetings, no one said a single word, not even a passing mention. Marcella hadn't even glanced in my direction. I wrapped a book I already owned, in leftover Christmas paper I'd found in a drawer, and sat on the edge of my bed that evening. I unwrapped it slowly, pretending for 5 minutes that it was a surprise, pretending for 10 more that it didn't matter. Now, as the music pulsed below and laughter filled every room but mine, I lay there again. But this time, it wasn't sadness curling inside me. It was something colder, sharper. Later that night, long after the last guest had left and the balloons had started to sag, I came downstairs again. The scent of frosting still lingered faintly in the air. The trash can was open just enough to reveal the remnants of the cake, thick crumbs and a sliver of icing that read, "Happy Birthday, Viora," in glittery gold cursive. One balloon, half deflated, rested quietly in the corner. I sat at the bottom of the stairs, not crying, not angry, just still. I felt like an old painting hung in the wrong hallway, something forgotten but too inconvenient to throw away, something you pass by without ever really seeing, an artifact in a house full of living people. That night, I pulled out a notebook and began writing, not out of rage, not even pain, because someday, when they say I made it all up, when they claim I twisted things, I'll have every moment written down. And I'll know I didn't imagine it. I didn't steal the bracelet, but that night, I stole back something else, my resolve. The next morning felt colder than usual, even though the thermostat hadn't changed. There was a draft in the hallway, or maybe just in my bones. I walked past the kitchen where Marcella was already seated, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. She glanced at me briefly, then looked away. Her silence didn't feel neutral, it felt loaded. I was halfway through brushing my teeth when she barged into my room. No knock, just a storm in the shape of a woman carrying an empty velvet jewelry box. "Where is it?" she demanded, waving the box like it held a smoking gun. I didn't have time to answer before she continued. "Viora's bracelet." "Her grandmother gave it to her. You were in her room yesterday, weren't you?" I stared at her, toothbrush still in hand. "I was putting away laundry." "Uh-huh," she said, folding her arms. "And that just so happens to be the last time anyone saw it." There it was, no preface, no attempt at kindness, just an accusation, sharp and instant. I rinsed my mouth, still silent. I had learned that anything I said too quickly would be turned into evidence. "Don't you have anything to say for yourself?" she pressed. "I didn't take anything," I said, finally. Quiet, but firm. She shook her head. "That's not going to cut it this time." I followed her downstairs, not because she told me to, but because I knew where this was headed, and I wasn't about to be accused in secret. If she was going to drag me through the mud, she could at least do it in front of the people she pretended to protect. Gideon was at the kitchen table, typing something into his laptop, glasses on, coffee steaming. Viora sat nearby, sipping orange juice, not looking up. Marcella walked in first, then gestured toward me. "We need to have a conversation." Gideon glanced up. "Now?" "Yes, now." Her voice had that edge to it, the one he never pushed back against. "She stole Viora's bracelet," Marcella said, looking directly at me like I was an object under cross-examination. "The one with the silver charms. You remember it, right?" Gideon sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Is this really?" "It's missing. She was the last one in the room. I'm not jumping to conclusions, Gideon. I'm connecting dots." "I didn't take anything," I said again, calmly. Viora still didn't look up. Marcella turned toward me, tone sharp. "I never thought I'd have to say this, but we raised you better." That word, "we," landed hard, as if she'd had any hand in raising me. I looked at Gideon. He didn't move. He didn't defend me. He didn't even ask a question, just stared at his coffee like it had all the answers. Marcella stepped closer. This house runs on trust, and when someone breaks that trust, there are consequences. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask, what trust? But instead, I stood there, the air around me thick with judgment. I felt like I was outside my own body, watching a girl be accused of something she didn't do by a woman who had never once hugged her. Marcella folded her arms. Say you're sorry. I didn't take it. Say it anyway, she hissed. For the good of this family. That word again. Family. Used like a weapon. I looked at Viora. She finally raised her eyes and met mine. There was something there. Hesitation. Maybe guilt. But she said nothing. She set her juice down without finishing it. I'm sorry, I said. Not to her. Not to Marcella. But to the space between us. Just to make it end. Marcella nodded like she had won something. Thank you, she said. Now go to your room. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step echoing louder than the last. I sat on the edge of my bed, back straight, hands in my lap. Hours passed. That evening, Viora found the bracelet under the couch cushion. She told Marcella quietly in the kitchen. I heard it from the top of the stairs. Marcella didn't come up to tell me. No one did. At dinner, there were again only 3 plates, not 4. Viora glanced at me once but quickly looked away. I waited for something. Anything. But silence filled every gap in the room. That night, I pulled out my tablet. I'd been using it mostly for school, but now, I had a new use for it. I opened the camera. Hit record. Set it on my desk and just talked. I was accused today, I began. No one asked for proof. No one even asked if I was okay. They just looked at me and decided I was guilty. I paused. Maybe they won't believe me, but someday someone will. So I'm recording this, for whoever needs to see the truth. I saved the video, backed it up twice. Then I opened a new folder. For later. The next morning, I added another clip. Nothing dramatic. Just a 5-second video of Marcella reminding Viora that she was the only girl in this house who mattered. I didn't say a word. I just pressed record. The fire took my letter, but it sparked something else I didn't expect. Clarity. That clarity didn't show up all at once. It arrived quietly, like frost on the windows in the early morning. At first, it was just a change in how I looked at things, how long I lingered at a doorway, how sharply I noticed silence that used to feel harmless. The next night, I sat at my desk and took out a clean sheet of paper. The first had gone up in smoke, but I still had something to say. I wrote carefully, like every word mattered because it did. Dad, I started, I'm not trying to stir trouble. I just don't think Marcella likes me. I know that might sound dramatic, but I don't feel safe saying this out loud. I went on, choosing each sentence with care. How she spoke to me, how I wasn't at the table anymore, how my birthday passed like a Tuesday. I didn't beg. I didn't accuse. I just told the truth as plainly as I could. I folded the letter 3 times, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it between the files in his leather briefcase when he left it open near the front door. He was scheduled to leave for a weekend conference in Richmond. I figured by the time he read it, he'd be away from her long enough to see it for what it was. That night, I went to sleep feeling something almost like relief. It didn't last 24 hours. The next evening, I came down to the kitchen for water. The house was quiet. Marcella stood at the stove stirring something that smelled like beef and garlic. She didn't look up as I entered, but her voice cut through the quiet like glass. You should really be careful what you write, Serene. I froze. She reached into the drawer beside her, pulled out a familiar piece of paper, now crumpled, creased. My letter, my handwriting, my words. I'm surprised, she continued, at how much you think you understand, and how little you actually do. I stood there, my throat dry. Did you read my— I read everything in this house, she interrupted, especially things left in places they shouldn't be. She turned back to the stove as if it were just another Tuesday. I waited. Part of me expected her to lecture me, to threaten me, but instead, she reached over to the sink, grabbed the lighter from the counter, and, without ceremony, lit the edge of the letter. It caught instantly, curling into black. She dropped it into the sink, where it smoked, then vanished. "Next time," she said, "you might want to try a diary with a lock." I went back upstairs, shaking. Not from fear, exactly. From the bitter confirmation that even the smallest effort to be heard was treated like rebellion. Days passed, but they didn't pass quietly. Tension in the house hummed beneath everything, every clink of a fork, every closed door. Gideon left for Richmond without ever mentioning the letter. I had my answer. Then came the text. I was doing homework on the living room floor when my phone buzzed. The message came from Dad's contact. "Marcella says you're struggling with boundaries. We'll talk when I'm back. Dad." I read it 3 times. Something about the tone. Wasn't him. Struggling with boundaries? That wasn't how he talked. And he never signed texts with Dad. My stomach knotted. I went upstairs, pulled out my old tablet, and opened the contact settings on my phone. I scrolled through the messages, comparing timestamps. The contact info had been modified, subtly, but enough. The number the message came from wasn't his. Marcella had texted me, from her phone, masquerading as him. I sat on my bed, heart pounding. She had read my letter, burned it, and now planted fake words in my head as if they came from the one person I was still holding out hope for. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on the porch steps wrapped in my hoodie, watching the steam from my breath mix with the crisp January air. Above me, the stars blinked like they were trying to send a message. Maybe they were. I sat there for over an hour. Then I went inside, turned on the hallway light, and walked straight to my room. I pulled the tablet off my bookshelf. For the first time, I opened the camera, not for homework or silly videos, but with intent. I hit record. My name is Serene. I live in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm 14. This is what it looks like when you're gaslit in your own home. I paused. Tonight, I got a message from someone pretending to be my dad. It wasn't him. I checked. I inhaled, steady. Not shaky, not scared. She burned my letter. And now she's burning every path I have to speak up. But I'm not done talking. I clicked save. That was the beginning of something. I didn't know what yet, but it felt like the smallest match in a very dark room. Over the next few days, I started recording things, not hours of footage, just small moments, a muttered insult, a slammed door. Marcella telling someone on the phone, "I only have one daughter, thank God." I didn't respond. I just captured it. Viora noticed once. I saw her eyes flicker toward the tablet angled near my desk lamp. But she didn't say anything. Not yet. One afternoon, I walked past the hallway mirror and caught my reflection. I looked the same, but something had shifted behind my eyes. I wasn't hoping someone would save me anymore. I was preparing to save myself. That email didn't just delete my name, it confirmed hers as the enemy. It happened on a Wednesday, a few days after I recorded the clip about the fake text. The week had started quiet, with Marcella keeping a calculated calm. It was almost worse than the shouting, a silence sharp enough to cut through. That morning, I checked my school email during second period. Most messages were the usual: schedule updates, lunch menus, a reminder to submit a science project. But one subject line stood out: scholarship status notification. I tapped it. The email was brief, clinical. Dear Serene, we regret to inform you that the Ashburn Gifted Scholars Initiative has been reassigned to another candidate. Thank you for your participation and continued academic excellence. My chest went still. I stared at the screen for a solid minute, rereading each line like I'd missed something. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe it was a mistake. I had the highest scores. My application had been reviewed and approved 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Eliora had even congratulated me in person, said she'd nominated me herself. At lunch, I found her near the counselor's office, sipping coffee from a ceramic mug that read, "Be kind anyway." She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Hey, Serene, everything okay?" I handed her my phone without speaking. She read the email, brows drawing together. "Wait, what? That can't be right. Your file was flagged as one of the top 2 in the entire district." She immediately turned to her computer and pulled up my application. I watched as her expression shifted from confusion to something heavier. "There's a note here," she said. "From home." "From who?" I asked, though I already had a guess. She scanned the file. "A call log from Marcella Edwards. It says you've had recent behavioral issues and that she's concerned the added pressure of a scholarship might impact your emotional stability." I blinked, but my face didn't change. I had stopped reacting the way people expected a long time ago. "There's no documentation," she continued. "No write-ups, no incidents on file. It's just a note, verbal communication marked as guardian concern. That's irregular." I stared at the floor, my jaw tight. "So that's it? They took her word and pulled the scholarship?" Eleora looked pained. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. This isn't standard protocol. I'll ask for a review." "No," I said, voice calm but cold. "It's fine." She blinked. "Are you sure?" "I just needed to know how it happened." "Now I do." I left her office without another word. I didn't go to my next class. I walked the perimeter of the school twice, then took the long route home, phone gripped so tight my knuckles went pale. When I got back, the house was quiet. Marcella was at the dining table, laptop open, mug beside her, always presenting as the productive homemaker. I held up my phone, the email still open. "They took back the scholarship." She looked up, calm as ever. "Oh, that's unfortunate." I waited, watching her eyes. No flicker, no guilt. "You did it," I said. She reached for her tea and took a sip. "I'm just protecting your image, sweetheart," she said casually. "Not everyone handles pressure well." I almost laughed. "So now I'm unstable?" "You're young, sensitive. You overthink things. I'm trying to help you find balance." "By pulling my name from something I earned?" She shrugged. "You'll have other chances. This one wasn't a good fit." "I know what's best." I stepped closer, the space between us small but heavy. "You lied to them," she smiled, almost maternally. "I guided them." At that moment, Viora walked in from the backyard, earbuds slung around her neck. She stopped when she saw us, sensing tension. Her eyes flicked to me, then to Marcella. I wanted to scream, to shout at her to speak up, to say something, anything, but she didn't. She stood there, unsure, then turned and walked to the kitchen. Marcella gave me one last glance, the kind people give pets when they've grown tired of them. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I went to my room, shut the door, and sat on the bed. Not crying, not pacing, just still. Then I opened my tablet. I turned on the front camera, stared into the lens, and hit record. "My name is Serene," I said slowly, "and I earned a scholarship I'll never receive because my stepmother made a phone call." I held up my phone to the camera, the email visible. "This is what happened when I did something good. This is who took it away." I saved the video and uploaded it to a private drive, password protected, hidden. That night, I whispered to myself as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. "I'm done apologizing for being visible." She didn't break me that night, but she did break the silence. A week later, Marcella hosted one of her famous girls' dinner nights, which meant the house smelled like lemon chicken and Pinterest-worthy desserts, and the furniture had been rearranged just enough to look staged but casual. The kind of dinner where she made sure the wine bottles were turned just right for the camera and the napkins folded like they belonged on magazine covers. It was also the kind of night where I was supposed to sit quietly, smile when spoken to, and not overshare. I was used to being invisible, but this time was different. This time, she invited me to sit at the table. Marcella had positioned herself at the head of the table. I took my usual spot, the one near the end, not quite next to anyone, not quite across from anyone. Just there. Present, but peripheral. She began her toast as predictably as ever. "To strong women, raising strong daughters." Her glass clinked gently. "And to Viora," she added, turning her body toward her daughter, who has just completed her last essay for early college applications. The women around the table clapped. Someone said, "That's amazing, hun." Marcella beamed. "She's our shining star." Then her eyes shifted toward me, and the pitch of her voice softened like she was about to compliment the family dog. "And Serene," she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "is our quiet one. So grounded. That kind of strength. Silent strength. It's just as powerful." The room nodded in agreement, as if I had been given a trophy. I gave a tight smile, but my chest burned. Grounded. Quiet. A strength so quiet, it might as well be absence. I sat through the rest of the dinner, chewing slowly, feeling the weight of their praise like a leash. They didn't know they were applauding a version of me that wasn't real, one Marcella had curated. Later that night, while picking up dishes from the dining table, I passed by Viora's backpack, left carelessly in the hallway. A few papers had slipped out, and one caught my eye, not because of the heading, but because it had my name on it. I picked it up. "Thank you for your interest in our pre-college creative writing program. We regret to inform you." I froze. The letter was addressed to me, but I had never applied to that program. I would have remembered my name, my email, my address, but the formatting was wrong. The writing sample attached was not mine. I stood there for a full minute, heart pounding. It didn't take a genius to piece it together. Marcella had submitted a fake application on my behalf, with a weak sample, just enough to make sure I didn't get in. I carried the letter to my room and compared it with the application materials I had saved on my tablet. It was so obvious. Too obvious. Almost like she hadn't even tried to hide it. Or maybe she didn't think I was paying attention. The next morning, after everyone had left for school or errands, I walked into Viora's room. She was painting her nails on the floor, music playing through her earbuds. I sat on the edge of her bed and waited for her to notice me. When she did, she pulled out one earbud. "What?" I held up the letter. Her face drained just a little. "Why does your mom need me to fail for you to shine?" I asked, my voice calm, but pointed. "I didn't ask her to do anything," she muttered. "But you didn't stop her either." "She's just trying to help," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Help who?" Viora didn't answer. "I'm not your competition, Viora," I continued. "I never was. You could have said something. You still can." She looked up, and for the first time, I saw it. Not defiance, not superiority, just shame. "You think I like this?" she snapped. "Being watched all the time? Having to be perfect all the time?" I blinked. That wasn't the answer I expected. "She says I'm her legacy," she said softly, almost to herself. "But I don't even know who I am half the time." There was a pause, heavy and unfamiliar between us. Then she put her earbuds back in and turned away. I didn't follow her. Back in my room, I stared at the letter again. I'd always known Marcella was calculated, but now I knew she wasn't just trying to erase me. She was building a narrative, one where I never existed as more than a muted background character. I opened my journal and wrote, "This is the line. The next time she touches my life, I'll touch back. Not violently, not cruelly, just truthfully." That evening, I didn't film anything. I didn't post. I didn't shout. I sat with myself. I breathed. I let the clarity of what I now knew sink into my bones. She didn't break me that night, but she did break the silence. They wanted me gone. But now, they'll wish I had stayed silent. It was a cold Thursday afternoon when the message came in. I had just stepped off the school bus, the wind biting through my jacket, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Dad. But the moment I read the text, I knew something was off. "We think it's best if you spend some time away. Marcella found a boarding program that will help you focus." There was no hi, no love you, no use of my name, just a verdict typed out like a weather alert. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the screen as kids pushed past me. I read it again, then a third time. My hands trembled, not from the cold. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence from me was already what they expected. Inside the house, everything was normal. Marcella was in the kitchen chopping vegetables like she hadn't just tried to ship me out of the family. Gideon wasn't home yet. Viora was in her room, probably pretending none of it involved her. I walked upstairs, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of my bed. The walls of my room looked smaller that day. Not physically, but emotionally, like the space itself had conspired to shrink around me. That night, I searched for something I hadn't touched in over a year. I dug through the bottom drawer of my bookshelf, behind some old notebooks, until I found the hardcover novel my mom had given me on my 10th birthday. I hadn't opened it since she passed. I used to sleep with it beside me like it was armor. I flipped through the pages slowly. The spine still crackled, the paper still smelled faintly of her perfume. And there it was, tucked between chapter 11 and 12. A letter. Her handwriting. Serene, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there the way I wish I could be. But you're strong, baby. You've always been. And whatever storm comes, remember who you are. They don't get to rewrite that. I read it 3 times before folding it back into the book and tucking it under my pillow. My heartbeat finally slowed. The next morning, I left early for school. When I came back in the afternoon, the book was gone. I tore apart my room, every shelf, every drawer, even under the bed. Nothing. I ran downstairs. Marcella was folding laundry on the couch, her tone calm as ever. Looking for something? I didn't answer. She didn't wait. If you're asking about the book, it's in the trash, along with the letter. My throat went dry. You had no right. I have every right, she said, folding a towel. That letter was keeping you tied to a grief you refuse to let go. You need to move forward. That's what this boarding school is for. It wasn't yours, I said, voice shaking. None of this is. Marcella stood, arms crossed. You don't get to decide what's best for you, Serene. That's not how this works. You mean because I'm not your daughter? Her jaw tightened. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything, I said. You just don't like it when someone sees behind the curtain. At that moment, the front door opened. Gideon walked in, briefcase in one hand, tie half loosened. He looked tired, older than last week. Marcella turned to him like nothing had happened. We were just talking about the program I mentioned. I turned to him, eyes burning. Is it true? You're sending me away? He paused. His eyes flicked between us. I think it might be good for you, he said slowly. A fresh environment. A chance to reset. To reset what? I snapped. The version of me that doesn't make her uncomfortable? Serene, he said, raising a hand. Let's not do this right now. Of course. Let's not do this. Let's not do anything that might reveal the truth. I stared at him for a moment. The silence between us didn't feel like distance. It felt like a choice. I walked past both of them, up the stairs, and into my room. That evening, I sat in the backyard, hoodie pulled up, knees drawn to my chest. The sky had turned purple, the first stars blinking into view. My breath came out in puffs of steam. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and propped it against the back porch light. I hit record. My name is Serene. I live in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm 14 years old, and my family is trying to send me away. I paused. My stepmother threw out the last letter my mother ever wrote me. She said grief makes me weak. But it's not grief that weakens me. It's silence. I stared into the lens. If this is exile, I choose rebellion. I stopped the recording and uploaded it to my locked folder. Then I opened my email and attached the video to a message for Ms. Eliora. Subject line, in case anything happens. I didn't wait for courage. I hit send. The house she ruled with silence just became a stage where her mask cracked, and we were all watching. I didn't plan for it to happen the way it did. I only meant to record a pattern, keep a trail, build a slow, steady case. But something about that morning felt off. It was early March, the wind outside still pretending winter hadn't given up. The sun hadn't fully broken through the clouds, and inside the house, it was too quiet for comfort. That kind of quiet where you know it's the breath before a scream. Marcella was in the kitchen again, pacing and muttering about kids who don't respect boundaries. I kept my distance. I knew better than to offer a reply. I picked up my book from the living room table where I had left it the night before, spine up, pages splayed open, exactly where I'd stopped. You left this here again, she said sharply, her tone like she'd just found a roach in the fridge. This is not your personal library. It was one book, I said, keeping my voice even. Her heels clicked against the tile as she walked toward me. And that's how it starts. First a book, then a mess, then a reason for people to say I don't run a clean home. She grabbed the novel and slapped it off the table. It landed near my feet with a loud thud, pages bent. You are not going to sabotage my space with your chaos. What she didn't know, what she'd never even considered, is that just down the hallway, tucked on a shelf, my tablet was open and recording. Not just that, it was streaming. I had enabled the setting the night before, deciding I would run a test, see if the footage could sync live to a cloud service I had set up through Miss Eliora's guidance. I didn't expect to catch anything, not like this, but there it was, her words, her voice, her hand slapping the book, and every second of it was live. At that moment, I didn't know who was watching, I just knew someone was. I bent down and picked up the book, heart racing but face blank. Marcella stared at me. Pick up after yourself, Serene. One day, when you're not coddled anymore, you'll understand what it takes to keep order. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Halfway across town, in the school cafeteria, Viora sat across from a girl who was halfway through biting into a sandwich. The girl stopped chewing and shoved her phone across the table. Isn't that your house? Viora blinked, confused, then took the phone and stared. The live stream played without filters or context. Her mother, my voice, the thud of the book hitting the floor, the tone that even I had grown numb to. The cafeteria buzzed with low conversation. 2 more phones pulled up the video. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" Viora stood up, mouth dry. She didn't say anything. She just walked out of the room, left her tray, her books, everything. She didn't go home that night. I found out the next morning from the guidance counselor's office, where I'd been called in unexpectedly. Mrs. Eliora sat behind her desk, unusually quiet. She looked at me like someone trying to process something massive, but not wanting to crush it. I saw the stream, she finally said. I waited. You've been documenting for weeks, haven't you? I nodded. Do you know who shared it? No, I said honestly. It wasn't supposed to go public. She leaned forward. Someone clipped the feed and sent it to 3 school staff members and the PTA. My breath caught. It was anonymous, she said. But I don't think it matters anymore. What matters is it's out, and people saw it. That weekend, the school hosted an annual student showcase. Parents, teachers, administrators, all packed into the auditorium. Every year, there was a short video recap of student projects. Viora was on the committee that helped edit it. I sat 3 rows back, not expecting anything except another reminder that I was never the daughter on display. But as the video began, the tone shifted. Clips of students building science projects faded to black, replaced by a caption, "What does home mean to you?" Then came the footage, uncut, unflinching. Marcella's voice, my silence, the slap of the book, her words, "You are not going to sabotage my space with your chaos." Gasps echoed around the room. The screen went black again. Silence. Then a chair scraped. Viora stood. She stepped onto the stage without waiting for permission, walked to the mic, and looked out at a room full of eyes she had grown up trying to impress. "That's not a mother," she said, her voice clear. "That's a performance piece gone wrong." No applause followed. Just a murmur, a low tide of discomfort that rippled through every row. Marcella was there, of course, sitting straight, smiling too tightly, eyes darting around like she was trying to find an exit that wasn't physical. Gideon sat beside her, frozen. Viora turned to face them, just for a moment. Then she walked off the stage, past every row, past me. She didn't even glance down, just kept walking. But for the first time, I felt like she had taken my side. No one stood to defend Marcella. Not that day, not after that. The house she ruled with silence had become a public stage, and the curtain had been ripped open. She wanted a legacy. Instead, she got a lesson carved into silence and shame. The Ashburn Community Center was dressed in pastel banners and folding chairs that looked like they'd been borrowed from a local church basement. The award ceremony for Community Mother of the Year was one of those small-town events where people smiled too wide and clapped too early, desperate to convince themselves they belonged to something wholesome. Marcella arrived early, of course. She wore ivory, not white. White is too wedding, she had said days before. Ivory is mature, elegant. She paired it with pearls that gleamed just enough under the stage lights and a smile that was practiced in a bathroom mirror. Viora walked beside her, lips pressed into a polite line. No emotion, just presence. Gideon trailed behind, shoulders tighter than I'd ever seen. He wasn't holding Marcella's hand. He wasn't even walking next to her. He was just there, like a man who had finally started to question whether silence had cost him too much. I sat near the back of the room, not on the family row, not on stage, just another seat in the crowd. The woman hosting the event was all smiles and fake cheer. She ran through a long list of community highlights before finally introducing Marcella. "And now," she said, voice sweet as syrup, "please welcome our Community Mother of the Year, Mrs. Marcella Edwards." Applause followed, polite, brief. Marcella stepped onto the stage like it had been built just for her. She approached the microphone, shoulders straight, teeth gleaming. But before she could speak, the screen behind her flickered. There was no announcement, no build-up, just sudden darkness. Then, video. It began with a shot from inside our living room. The grainy footage was unmistakable. Marcella's voice echoed through the speakers. "You are not going to sabotage my space with your chaos." Gasps broke the room's silence. Another clip. Her throwing away the book my mother gave me. Then one more. Her smiling as she said, "Grief makes you weak. We move forward. That's what this family needs." The video wasn't edited for drama. No narration, no music, just raw moments. Her words, her actions, and then, just for a moment, a still shot of me, seated alone at the dinner table. No commentary, just truth. The screen faded to black. No applause followed. Marcella stood frozen, her fingers clenched at the podium. She opened her mouth, then closed it. From the side of the stage, Viora stepped forward. She didn't take the mic. She just spoke, her voice carrying anyway. "I used to think my mother was someone to admire," she began, calm and steady. "I now know she taught me how to lie, to protect herself." The room erupted, not in applause, but in murmurs. Shock, disgust, confusion. Marcella turned toward her daughter, lips parted. "Viora, not here." But it was already done. Viora walked off stage without another word. Gideon stood, slowly. He didn't say anything either, just followed Viora. Marcella remained, now truly alone. The host awkwardly returned to the stage, clearly shaken. Thank you, Marcella, and thank you all for being here." No one clapped. After the ceremony, people began trickling out, some faster than others. I lingered in the lobby, not hiding, just waiting. A woman from the PTA came up to me. She didn't say much, just placed a hand on my arm and whispered, "We didn't know. We believe you now." Another parent nodded in passing, avoiding eye contact. A teacher who'd once called me quiet and hard to read gave me a soft smile. I didn't return it. Outside the building, near the side entrance, Marcella stood near her car, clutching a certificate. It wasn't framed anymore, just a single sheet of heavy paper. Viora approached her slowly. I stayed at a distance, watching. They didn't speak, not a word. Then, without drama, Viora ripped the certificate in half. She handed one piece to her mother and let the other fall to the pavement. Marcella didn't pick it up. She didn't look at me. She got in the car and shut the door. The rest of us watched as the vehicle pulled away from the curb and disappeared around the corner. She wanted a legacy. Instead, she got a lesson carved into silence and shame. The Ashburn Community Center emptied slowly, the way a theater does after a tragedy too weighty for applause. People drifted out in silence. No one lingered by the snack table or exchanged stiff goodbyes. They just slipped away, like air from a balloon no one realized was deflating. Marcella had vanished first. True to form, she didn't wait around for hugs or handshakes. She simply left. No speech, no backward glance. Her absence, like the carefully staged world she once ruled, collapsed without ceremony. No crash, just silence. Back at the house, everything felt altered in small but undeniable ways. It wasn't peace, not quite, but it was something gentler than what had existed before. The tension that used to stretch through the walls like a tight wire had slackened. The space felt less curated, less brittle. Marcella's signature touches had evaporated, her neatly stacked ceramic dishes gone from the china cabinet, the scent of her overpriced vanilla sugar candles replaced by the neutral smell of old wood and laundry detergent. Even the baby grand piano in the living room, once strictly off limits unless being polished, sat open now, the keys bare and waiting. Someone might actually play it. Gideon still lived in the house, but he moved like someone who had forgotten how to walk with purpose. He spoke less, and when he did, his sentences often drifted off halfway through, trailing into silence like fog over water. He wasn't mean, just hollowed out. As if he had spent so long taking orders, he didn't know how to choose his own thoughts anymore. The house wasn't healed, but it had stopped bleeding. One afternoon, while heading upstairs with a laundry basket on my hip, I passed the hallway where the family wall used to be. For years, it had displayed a parade of perfectly aligned photographs, staged smiles at birthday parties, coordinated outfits at Christmas, Marcella and Viora always front and center. I was there too, sometimes. An elbow here, a blurry shadow in the background, a foot cut off at the frame's edge. But now, something new hung on the wall. A single frame. Plain oak, not silver or gilded. Inside it was a photo of me, Viora, and Gideon sitting on the front porch. It must have been taken just the weekend before. I didn't remember it being snapped. We weren't looking at the camera. No one was posing, but I was laughing, full, unguarded, mouth open laughing, the kind you don't fake. We were barefoot, the porch dusty, sunlight cutting sharp angles through the slats. There were no matching sweaters, no filters, just us. I stood there longer than I meant to, eyes fixed on the image. There was a pull in my chest, a kind of internal shifting I hadn't expected. I was here all along, I whispered, mostly to myself. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I went to the kitchen to make tea. Out of habit, I opened the junk drawer, where Marcella used to stash her emergency birthday candles, expired coupons, and batteries that never worked. That's when I found it. An envelope, yellowed and worn, shoved beneath a stack of ancient takeout menus. I recognized it the instant I touched it. My breath caught in my throat. It was the photograph Marcella had torn up months ago, the one of me and Mom, the one I thought she'd destroyed in a fit of spite. It was still torn, yes, but every piece was there, jagged edges, fold lines, crumples. It hadn't been thrown out, just hidden. I laid each torn section out on the table and slowly began piecing it back together with a roll of clear tape. My hands were steady, but something inside me trembled. When I finished, I stared at it for a long time. The photo was no longer perfect. The tape lines cut through our faces, slicing through smiles and skin and sunlight. But it was whole again, and that meant something. I didn't hang it up, didn't slide it into a new frame. Instead, I tucked it between two blank pages in my journal, pressed flat, protected. Some things aren't meant to be displayed. They're meant to be carried, stitched back together, not because they're flawless, but because they matter, because they survived what tried to tear them apart. The next morning was strangely warm for early March, the kind of day where the frost hesitated just long enough for grass to reappear. Viora sat on the front steps, her knees tucked tight to her chest, oversized sweatshirt sleeves covering her hands. She stared out across the lawn like she was watching something no one else could see. I joined her, handing her a hot mug of tea. She took it and looked at me for a long time, her expression unreadable. "I'm not ready to call her Mom again," she said quietly. "Maybe never." I nodded. "You don't have to." She sipped her tea. Her hands trembled just a little. "I still feel guilty," she murmured, "for not saying something sooner, for just letting it all happen." You don't owe her forgiveness, I said gently, but maybe we owe ourselves peace. She didn't respond right away, just sat there beside me, shoulder to shoulder, eyes tracing the birds in the yard. A blue jay landed near the edge of the grass, bold, noisy, unapologetic. It hopped a few times, then shot off into the sky with a sharp cry. Life was still happening, messy, loud, real. Later that day, when the house was quiet again, Gideon upstairs napping, Viora laughing faintly in her room during a phone call, I sat down at my desk. A blank page waited in front of me, but I wasn't writing a journal entry, not a log, not another invisible record of things no one else would believe. I was writing a letter. Not to Marcella, not to Gideon, not even to my mother. To me. My hand moved slowly, deliberately. Serene, they never saw you. But that doesn't mean you weren't real. You held your ground. You told the truth. You didn't disappear. I sat back, letting the ink dry, the silence around me soft. Then I added one last line. I was never invisible. I was just waiting to be seen by the right version of me. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. Sometimes, the loudest act of courage is simply refusing to stay silent. Serene didn't fight back with fury, she fought back with truth. And when truth is witnessed, it can't be unseen. How many families are built on performance, while the real pain hides behind picture frames? If this story moved you or reminded you of something you've lived through, drop a comment. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters.